today we're finally going to start putting some suspension back in, which is the whole reason I started this project. As you can see, I went a little overboard. So today we're going to be working on little control arms and spindles and the inner and outer tie rods. So let's jump into it. I'm not doing the struts yet because I'm waiting on putting on some parts for my caster camber plates. So once I get that, I'll put in the struts, then I'll be able to tie it all together, do the springs and everything. But I can go and get this piece done without the things I'm waiting on. So I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna start with the control arms. And these are, geez, I believe they're BMR. Believe it or not, Altered Fox does not sell these. There's just entirely too many variations. It's best to go to BMR. And you can ask Funky 50 about that because he has some issues. But these came with little grease fittings and cotter pins. My inner tie rods came with these nuts here and the little pins to lock those into place. My outer tie rods, which came with the grease fittings, the nuts there and the cotter pins, and then the I'll call them dust boots, but they're really bellows because they allow air to move back and forth from one boot to the other. And they do that just to keep air from blowing out through the seals on these and then sucking back in moisture and dirt. So basically, it just moves air back and forth between one boot and the other through this tube here. So make sure you want to have one of these metal tubes with you before you start this project. And these if you order these from Altered Fox, which I'll have a link down below, these come with stainless steel zip ties for the large end and then some little spring clips for the small end down here. If you get these Moog boots from anywhere else, they're going to come with just plastic zip ties, which you don't want to use. So I'll have links for all this stuff down below, but not these and not these. All right, let's jump into it. We'll start with these control arms. And I'm going to be using the factory bolts for these. These are actually the factory bolts. Of course, thanks to my buddy Justin for blasting these for me, and then I did the zinc plating and chromate. There'll be a link down in the summary below for the video on how that works. But they came out pretty good. They look almost chrome plated. All right, one more thing. I'm going to do the driver's side first. So I'm going to separate all this stuff between driver and passenger. The control arm, pretty easy to tell because the sway bar is at the front of the vehicle. So this would be the driver's side. And then the spindle's the same. So I'm going to look for the spindle with the tie rod end that goes towards the front, which is not that one. That's going to be this one. So that's going to mount just like that. The tie rod end mounted right there. All right, then your brake caliper is mounting on this other side over here. All right. So I'm not using a torque wrench. I'm not going to torque these down at all. I'm not going to torque these down. I will torque the spindle down though. All right, let's go ahead and throw in the A-arm first. All right, so I'm going to let's see how this thing fits in here first. I haven't even tried this yet. Just going straight to video, winging it a little bit. Oh, well that just goes right in there. I'm actually going to put just a little bit of silicone lubricant on each side of here, even though it goes in easily. I just want that to be against here so it's not binding against this. And I don't know if it's 100% necessary or not, but if you do put any type of lubricant, use silicone grease, not regular petroleum-based lubricant. And that's to kind of prevent the early breakdown of the polyurethane bushings here. I've actually got a tube of this silicone grease for the grease fittings here on the bottom, and I'll be greasing those after everything's done. Let me get my bolts ready first. So from the factory, the bolts typically go in from the outside and the nuts go on the inside. That's probably the same way I'll do it here. I don't think there's any reason to do it differently. Started. Let me get this other one started. All right, easy breezy. So both the bolt and the nut are both zinc plated and chromated over that, so I'm not using any anti-seize on here. I shouldn't have any issue with these with the nut seizing to the bolts. So that's it. I'll tighten these down just a little bit. Like I said, I'm not going to torque these. Let's see if I can run them in by hand. I know these nuts have some burrs on them to help hold them on. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to turn that. All right, that's good. That's kind of what I wanted, just enough, just tight enough to kind of hold it in place while I'm working with the spindle. I mean, it'll still swing down pretty easily, but it's not just free swinging. So now I'm going to grab my spindle and we'll put it into place. Put this up here where you can see it. I'll get something to prop under here to hold it up. So the spindle, very simply, just drops onto here like so. Or not. Drops onto here like so. Like so. Put the nut on there. Now you may think that this doesn't have to be super tight because this has got a cotter pin that goes through it. That is not the case. We're going to tighten this down to 100 foot-pounds. We can go ahead and torque that all the way because it doesn't have any bearing on the suspension travel like you do here. So let's find our socket. There we go. This is the 15/16, yes. Set up my torque wrench here. All right. I guess before I do that, I can go ahead and tighten it down with my regular ratchet. Okay. There we go. Now let's see if our cotter pin will slide through anywhere. All right, so I had to actually tighten this up another smidge. 100 pounds, 100 foot-pounds is kind of the low end, so I just tightened it around to my hole lined up there. All right, and then the next step is just to drop your cotter pin in. Hopefully it's lined up close enough. All right. So that piece is done. Now we are ready to get started on the tie rods. My lower tie rod end will go here. My inner tie rod will go here. Connect to the outer tie rod, which will go into this hole. So let's get that done next. All right, so I had this covered up while I was painting, doing other stuff, so I'll take that off. Make sure there's no debris in there. Looks pretty good. So now I'm just going to basically just screw this on. I'm just gonna take it until it stops. So once I'm done, I'm gonna put this little pin in, and then I'll keep it from unscrewing, kind of a safety measure. So this doesn't have to be like torqued down necessarily tight, but you see where the pin goes in is after the threads, and on here I'll show you in a minute, there's a space where that pin goes in behind the threads. Matter of fact, I can show you right now. Right in here is where that pin goes. There's a little flat, kind of recessed area right there. So that's why you need to take the pins out before you remove the inner tie rods, because it can mess up these threads as it drags across when you unscrew it. So, all right, and that's where I'm going to put it. If I can get the camera back in the right place. All right, let's go ahead and screw this down. Go ahead and put your 1 5/16 wrench on there. I know everybody's got one of these in their garage. Like I said, I'm not going to tighten it down super tight. Just get it snug, and that's all you need. And let's see. That feels pretty good right there. Now I can see a spot right here where I can easily get that pin in, tap it in. Okay, I'm gonna put my needle nose on there first to get it in all the way. And then once it's in all the way, then I'll just tap the pin with the hammer. And that'll set it. Maybe a tad more. There we go. There you go, that'll keep that from unscrewing. And we're done. So after I put the boot on there, this nut that comes with it will go on the end here, but I need to get the boot on here first. So I guess I want to go ahead and get my other inner tie rod on as well. So I'm going to do that real quick and I'll be right back in 1 second. All right, I did that side. Now I'm going to try to do this side with one hand. I don't know how that's going to work. So I've got some synthetic grease. I'm just going to put it right around here just to help get that lubed up to slide the boot on, or the bellows. And I'm going to put just a little bit of grease right down here on the tip. Alright, now what do I do with the boot? Alright, so I got this side on, got my tube on there. So the little place where the tube attaches is kind of right in the middle, facing the front, and kind of weaves amongst your power steering lines there, and should come across right in the middle, right in here, without really touching anything. So now let's see if I can get this boot on with one hand. All right, let's see if we can get this thing on here. There we go. And usually I push this on just to where it's past these ridges here. Those ridges stop like right there. So it should be good. Make sure this lines up. And you kind of want to probably use two hands here. I'm going to put the camera down. But I'm going to kind of push this onto the rod as you're pushing the boot onto the steering rack here. Hold on 1 second. Wait, before I do that, I want to put my strap on here, because once I connect the rod, I won't be able to get the strap in there. So I'm just going to get it kind of loosely attached. Right, as a matter of fact, yeah, let's have it loosely attached on there. Hold on 1 second. All right, so I've got that attached. Got the boot all the way on. My band is just kind of floating around in here. Just need to move it over and tighten that up, which I'll need two hands for. Rubber gloves that have grease on them do not work well with these stainless steel bands. I'm trying to tighten them down, but I'll get that tight. And just have this turned to where this tube isn't touching anything. You don't want it rubbing on anything. You see it's kind of close in there amongst everything, but it goes all the way across without touching anything. So I'm going to tighten that band down, and then we'll move to the outer tie rods. Okay, so now all that's left to do is put this nut on here. And this nut is the one that comes with the inner tie rod. And what that's going to do is tighten up against your outer tie rod to keep it from moving. Hopefully this is loose enough to run down by hand, or if not, I have to put some pliers or a wrench on it to get it to turn. But you'll want to run this down at least 3/4 of the way. All right, I got that down there enough, I think. So let's go ahead and put on our tie rod end, our outer tie rod. All right, so when I took this off, I counted the number of rotations that I turned it to take it off. So I'm gonna put it back on the exact same number of rotations, and I believe this was 32. So I'm gonna turn it 32 times once it starts. So there's 1, 2, 4, 5,
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32.
All right, that's it. Now, let's go tighten this nut down, and that'll hold it in place. So you wouldn't think you would need that, because this isn't going to turn because it'll be locked into the spindle, but the inner tie rod can actually turn and in fact move this in and out, so you don't want to do that. So I'm just gonna tighten this nut down. It's a 7/8. Put my crescent wrench on here. And there we go. That's it. Now we're ready to install the spindle, or connect the spindle to the tie rod end. Yeah, I just noticed something. I was in a big hurry. Wasn't paying attention. I forgot to put the little clamp on my boot there. So I guess I need to take all this off. That's the bad thing about having these types of clamps. You can't get it completely off with the tie rod end on there. So I'll remove this, put my clamp on, then I'll put it back on. I'll be back in a minute. Hate it when that happens. All right, that mistake has been fixed. Now we're ready to put the tie rod onto the spindle. All right, this side we've got a nut here and a cotter pin, same setup as on the ball joint there. So we'll just move this into place, tack it right on, just like that, easy breezy. This will get tightened down to about 35 to 40 foot-pounds. So not super tight, and I don't even know what size it is. If I get lucky here. Oh, no, not lucky. Smaller than a 13/16. All right, so that is a 3/4 inch. Go ahead and snug it down with my regular ratchet. Bring it home with my torque wrench. I'm going to set it for about 40 pounds because really I can go up to 45 to 50. So I'm going to set it for about 40, and then that'll give me some room to tighten it to get the hole to match up for my cotter pin. Go. Now if I can just find my cotter pin, there it is. Just gotta find my hole. Oh, there it is. Look at that. Looks like I might need to move this just a fraction more. Mess up the paint on my spindle there. Let me see here. Perfect. All right, so that is done, my friends. So we are not done completely. There's a couple of things I'm not gonna do yet. There are grease fittings that go on the bottom of the tie rod and on the bottom of the spindle at these joints. So I'm gonna wait till I get the struts in and the springs and everything, because I'm gonna be using the jack underneath the spindle and I don't want to damage the grease fitting. So I'm gonna wait until I put in the caster camber plates and the strut and the spring and all of that, and then I'll make sure my spring is right. I may end up having to cut it a little bit. And once I'm done playing with all that, I'll put both these grease fittings in and go ahead and grease both these joints. And at that time, I'll also torque down my control arm here on each side. And that torque for that, by the way, is 110 to 120 foot-pounds up here. You can see that. Up here, 110, 120 pounds on the control arm bolts. And I'll tell you what, at the end of the video, I'm gonna flash up all the torque specs for everything on this front suspension, just so you can have it for reference, all in one spot, and not have to listen to me talk about it. And then, of course, once I get the spring and the strut in, I'll do the end links here for the sway bar. And that is it. I appreciate you watching. And go ahead and like and subscribe. I got, like I said, a couple more videos, the springs, struts, caster camber plates. I may throw another video in here and there. And so definitely subscribe so you can catch all of those. And we'll see you next time. See ya!